Okay, Disco Chunky, smash our bass. Well, the months leading up to Donkey Kong December 2024, I made daily polls focused on the one and only DK64. There were some wacky results, and I love to go through them with you. After all, you crazy kids are responsible for these results. I'm going to skip the if the Kongs were Pokemon polls for now. I find this section really interesting, and I want to dedicate an entire video just on this subject, so keep your eyes peeled. Anyways, on to the polls. It's going to be kind of interesting because YouTube polls limit to 4 answers at most, which is perfectly fine because I think that kind of makes things creative, kind of like this very first poll. So, not including DK, the leader of the bunch, who is your favorite member of the DK crew. This is definitely really interesting because I can't believe our boy Lanky got such few votes, but also like not surprised that Diddy has such high results. Kind of happy to see Chunky's got a fan base. That's pretty sweet. He definitely deserves it. So based on my DK64 Worlds tier list video, these are amongst the 4 most hated worlds, which is kind of a stretch, but very much not surprised. Gloomy Galleon is the winner here. This is what I'm saying, that there are people that do not like Angry Aztec. I personally very much love it, but this is kind of like what I'm talking about. There are people out there, it's a small minority, they're a loud minority of people who don't like Angry Aztec. So that kind of leaves us with other worlds. What is the favorite? Happy to see that it's a complete 180 Fungi Forest. A lot of people really like Fungi Forest. I'm pleased to see that. Honestly, across the board, I'm happy with these results because I'm a big fan of Creepy Castle. I'm a big fan of Frantic Factory, and happy to see that there's some Jungle Japes lovers out there. This is kind of a wacky post because it's like, okay, you enter a world for the first time. Who are you visiting first? And it makes a lot of sense that Cranky Kong is up top because his upgrades make a huge difference. It really helps you continue moving on in any world. The other 2 Kongs, they're really more just upgrades after the first visit. First visit, no doubt, like you need it. You need the instruments, you need the weapons. After that, it's like, well, it's nice to have these upgrades. And then obviously Snide, like, you're just getting gold bananas and you're probably not going to visit him first because you got to collect those blueprints. This one's definitely a tough one. Which is the worst golden banana to collect? And I specifically avoided the bonus stages. I wanted to focus more on just like specific challenges. So mechanical fish, beetle race, rabbit race, and I couldn't think of a 4th, so I thought it'd be fun to let you all pitch in. Kind of only got one response, which was Diddy's cabin and Crystal Caves, which I think is very practical to this list, very appropriate to this list. So without a doubt, the beetle races, both versions are brutal and pretty unfair. So I could agree that that's probably worthy of a winner. The rabbit race is just straight up cheat. Like, I don't understand why it's as tough as it is. The mechanical fish, I don't quite agree with being second place, just because I know if you wait later down the road and you get the scope upgrade, okay, that becomes an issue. But otherwise, you can totally beat this challenge. I agree that the setup to doing this challenge, and if you lose, you got to do it all over again, is not ideal. But I don't quite agree that it's the toughest one. You know what I mean? Either way, we don't care for these challenges. They're not great. Okay, but now we're going to focus on the bonus stages, and no surprise at all, Beaver Bother has given a lot of people PTSD. I'm not a fan of Splish Splash Salvage. It's one of those challenges that is not hard on paper, but there's things kind of causing friction. I don't mind Big Bug Bash that much, but there's definitely times where I swear that Fly Swatter has a hole in it. And Batty Barrel Bandit it's just dumb luck. I mean, it's not, you can time it out, but I swear there's times where it feels like it's dumb luck. But obviously, Beaver Bother, it's gonna win. And now to do the opposite, because I do think there are genuinely fun bonus stages in this game. And it's kind of nice to see a tie here. I mean, Minecart Mayhem, I really like. I think it's a fun challenge. Crazy Kong Clamor is also, like, I think a fun challenge, but I think my personal vote would go to Minecart Mayhem. But this is a nice spread out of polls. It's kind of cool to see, like, no, there are some bonus stages that we like. This poll's kind of funny. It's like you enter a world for the first time, boom. What are you going to collect first? What do you see? And go for it right away. And definitely the color bananas make the most sense. It's kind of like the thing that gets you moving to the next part. Kind of funny to see the banana fairy is so low. I guess it's not funny. It makes sense that it's kind of a hassle to collect, but it's just funny to see it underneath watermelon life. Like, our priorities are definitely in place. All right, which coin is the most difficult to collect in this game? Definitely the Nintendo coin. That's for the DK Arcade. Rarer coin, it has its challenges, but you absolutely can complete Jetpack in one go. And I don't think I need to go into a lot of discussion on the DK Arcade. That's a tough one. If you don't agree with me, well, don't know what to say about that. All right, now for another wacky. Which one are you getting first? And makes a lot of sense, the supply crate. I mean, we use those guns quite a bit. They open things, they're great weapons. Kind of surprised to see the orange grenades being that high up. I'm realizing I just don't use them that much. But kind of not surprised that camera film is so low. Candy's headphones, I feel like those are super helpful. I mean, they wipe out all the enemies around you. Like, I don't know, kind of similar, but kind of different. Which of these collectibles are your favorite to collect? And I could totally agree the banana bunch is a fun one to collect. I mean, I just love the sound of collecting them. That kind of adds to the giddiness of like, oh, I got it. Without a doubt, banana balloons are going to be probably more of a pain to get for some folks. Very understandable. And banana metal, I mean, it's very rewarding to get it. I love that kind of exciting sound that comes out of it, but it's definitely like, you got to put in the work to get it. So banana bunch just makes perfect sense. I love this concept. Which enemy are you taking out first? Because it's like, these are the grunts, the easy, like takes 1 or 2 hits to knock them out. And no surprise, naughties are up top because they're so annoying and it just feels satisfying to just take them out, you know? I do really enjoy taking out critters too. They make this really funny kind of sound, and I just love the animation of them getting knocked out. It's really funny to me. This is definitely like a tough one. Which boss fight do you find to be the toughest? And I find for me it varies here and there. Sometimes I find Magic the toughest, sometimes I find like Puff Toss a little tougher, but I do agree like Magic is probably, I would consider, the toughest of all of them, really. If I could put every boss fight up here, I still think Magic would win. Danganronpa Rematch has its challenges. There's been times where I'm replaying and I lose, and it's just because I can't quite figure out, wait, do I need to keep doing the strong Kong punch? Do I just keep throwing regular punches? And it's just one of those things that you got to refresh my memory. This is definitely a fun pull in my opinion. Which enemy is the toughest? And it's like, they're common enemies, but they kind of vary in their strength. I mean, Kosha is the obvious winner in my opinion. They don't go down to normal punches. When they throw a hit at you, you lose 2 health slots. Like, that's pretty brutal. I don't think most enemies can do that. I think Crobots are worthy of a second place for very similar concept. They just don't go down to normal punches, but their attacks aren't as nearly deadly. This is definitely a tough pull, and I do wish that I could include all 8 in one. And it's just tough because all of the music is so good. I'm actually really surprised Gloomy Galleon is last because I genuinely believe that the music is really good in the world. Personally, I am happy to see Frantic Factory is the winner. It's one of my favorite worlds, and I also just love the music. All right, and now for the next batch of tracks, Creepy Castle being the winner. Not really surprised. It's a banger world, banger music. Happy to see Fungi Forest in second place, although I think maybe I would pick that as first place. I don't know. Fungi Forest just has a ton of variety to it. There's a lot going on for it. This one's kind of a tough pull just because it's hard to show a good image of the different arenas, but this one's kind of fun because there's no wrong answers, but kind of psyched to see, all right, Arena 1's the winner. But also Battle Arena takes second place. I mean, I didn't do a ton of multiplayer back then, but Battle Arena was definitely like the least played for me at least. So kind of cool to see second place. All right, awesome. So now we're going to go through each Kong ability and see what is the favorite amongst everyone. So with DK, it's kind of cool to see Strong Kong as number 1, but Baboon Blast is almost tied, which I'm a little surprised because I kind of don't like the Baboon Blast challenges. Over time, they get less and less enjoyable to me versus Strong Kong, that's just straight up invincible. So now Diddy Kong, very happy to see Rocket Barrel Boost is a high 81%. I mean, it's a very fun ability. Are the controls a little rocky? Yes, but once you kind of get them nailed down, it's very fun to control it. Chimpy Charge is an ability I kind of forget about until it's time to specifically use it. Lanky Kong kind of has tough abilities. I mean, Orang Stand is a classic Lanky ability, and I'm happy to see it's first place. A ring sprint, while I love it on paper, the challenges associated with it are not the best. Kind of, unfortunately, high difficulty. So Tiny Kongs makes perfect sense. Not even surprised Ponytail Twirl is the winner. I mean, that's like the best ability in the whole game. Chunky's is definitely going to be one of the tougher ones to vote for. I think all of his abilities are solid, great abilities. Hunky Chunky does make perfect sense. Like, it's perfect for him. It's a great ability. 10 out of 10, right? Primate Punch is also just a great ability. Very practical, very helpful. So I'm happy to see it second place. Gorilla Gun is really cool. I think it's great and appropriate for Chunky, but it's also like it comes in so late. It doesn't really feel like much of an improvement. So not surprised it's last place, but I do still appreciate it. This next round of polls are going to be really funny because it's all just tied into the character's lyrics in the DK rap. So I do think it's funny that there's a small 8% of people that don't think DK's coconut gun will hurt if you shoot. You guys must be pretty strong if you can survive that. When it comes to Tiny Kong and her being one cool Kong, I don't quite understand the 6% that said no. I'd like to have a talk with them. And this one's just perfect because Lanky Kong and his, he has no style, has no grace, has a funny face, and he digs his tune. That's great because there's no wrong answer, but also it's just funny to see the majority went with has a funny face. So Diddy, just like Tiny Kong, it's like, okay, 8% of you not smiling when Diddy plays his tune for you. I just want to talk. And then there's Chunky. Kind of makes sense that there's a large number of people voting for he's dead. But personally, I think he's one hell of a guy. These next couple polls are going to be interesting. It's going to be DK versus a different character. And I do think it makes sense, DK versus Diddy. I think DK would probably win this fight, but I do think it would be an interesting battle. I could see Diddy's jetpack being very helpful in this fight. And as for DK versus Tiny, it's actually the same results, 81% versus 19%. We still think that DK could win, and that's understandable. I can see why. I can understand why that would happen. Another potential close call, but DK just seems that much stronger in comparison. Now here, we got a little more faith in Lanky Kong. Still not winning, but we're getting just a bit closer to 50-50. If anything, maybe Lanky's got some wacky moves that could throw off DK, but I think when it comes to straight up strength, DK's probably winning. And now, finally, we got a winner, Chunky versus DK. There were some interesting conversations in the comments, people saying Chunky could win, but he wouldn't want to fight his friend, which I think is really sweet. So I do agree that the vote goes to Chunky. He could if he wanted to. And then the last one, because that was only 4 out of 5 days of the week, we've got Crusha versus DK. And I don't know if I agree with this. I actually think there's a good chance Crusha could win. Although he is a Kremlin, I don't know. I could see this being another close call, but we'll have to see. This is kind of a fun poll, and it's another, there's no wrong answers, but kind of curious to see who else would you add to the Super Smash Bros. Games? And so obviously Donkey Kong and Diddy are already in the games. We got K. Rool as well. Just kind of looking, who else might we be able to add? And I do agree that Lanky Kong would make for a really interesting character to add. I think Chunky Kong would be way too similar to DK, and I fear Tiny might not have enough of a moveset to get a full fleshed out character in Smash Bros. But Lanky, I feel like, is just unique enough and different enough from DK and Diddy to be a new character. I think that's kind of cool. Who had the best minecart challenge? I think this one is really interesting. I'm psyched to see that a lot of people really like DK's challenge. It's a fun one for sure. I feel like Chunky's would have been a little higher, but again, there's really no wrong answers. Chunky's is just very different from your basic minecart challenge. I mean, so is DK's, but Diddy's is a very like basic minecart challenge, and then Chunky kind of like amps it up in a different fun way. And then DK's is just totally different. Which version of the DK rap do you prefer? Well, no surprise, 97% prefer the original, but there's also a couple people that do prefer the Smash version. I'm not going to fight them on it, but good for them for being so bold and voting for it. This is kind of a fun poll. What animal buddy would you add to DK64? The game really lacks animal buddies. It's surprising that there's only 2. So kind of cool to see that there's a lot of people rooting for Squitter. I'd love to see potential for Espresso as well. I don't think there's any wrong answers, but I definitely agree that probably could have introduced way more animal buddies, especially for like bonus stages. The opportunities are there. Okay, would you play a DK64 sequel? There's an obvious correct answer, and 7% of you didn't quite get it. All right, so now going for like a different approach, King K. Rool versus different boss fights. And I do think this is going to be pretty interesting. K. Rool versus Bowser. It's almost 50-50. I don't really know who could win, but I do agree it's going to be a close one. As for K. Rool versus Ganondorf, yeah, I think I gotta agree. Ganondorf is winning this one. He's just so tough. This one does seem a little more obvious. K. Rool versus Wario. I don't think Wario is winning this one. However, I do think it would make for an entertaining fight. Maybe we just boot up Smash Bros. And put these two characters head to head. All right, and finally, K. Rool versus King Dedede. I feel like this could probably closer to 50-50. I'm putting my money on K. Rool, but I like to think that K. Rool might have a couple of tricks up his sleeves and could put up a good fight. All right, and then finally, we've got K. Rool versus Banjo and Kazooie, and it's a close one. It's almost 50-50. I think I might put my money on Banjo and Kazooie. I just feel like they're too good of heroes to be beaten. They've got a lot of different abilities under the belts. Like, I feel like they have a good fighting chance. So this one's kind of interesting. Which character are you saving first in Angry Aztec, Tiny or Lanky? As you already know, these two characters are both unlockable in Angry Aztec. I personally always go for Tiny first. I mean, mainly because you have earlier access to that section that you can get Tiny. I'm also just like that much more of a fan favorite of Tiny. It's one of those things where like, okay, I've unlocked Tiny Kong, life is good. This is a tough pull. Which Tiny Kong design do you prefer, classic versus modern? And I don't want to say there's a right version, but it's really tough to adapt to the modern version. I understand the lore behind it. It's just one of those things where, guys, we had a good thing going here. Why did you change it? This is kind of a cool poll. Which Simian Slam is your favorite? Functionally, they don't really do anything differently. It's just, an upgrade. I do really appreciate how it goes from a green to a blue and then to a red shockwave animation. And I do really love that each animation changes into what the Kongs do. I can agree that the red one it feels really special, feels really fun. The blue one just like had such a huge shock value to it. It's like the very first time we get this upgrade, and it doesn't happen until Fungi Forest, like the 5th world. You go 4 worlds with the same green basic Simian Slam, and then suddenly, oh, whoa, we got new ones now. This is cool. So before Hideout Helm, do you try collecting all of the blueprints, or do you just get some of them and move on? And this one's really interesting to me. I mean, there's no wrong answers, but I'm a big get all the blueprints kind of guy. So it is a little interesting to me that some folks just don't get them all. They only collect some of them. I can't imagine like the anxiety that would come of just like, oh, Hideout Helm, clock down. I don't have the full clock to work with. So which car race is your favorite in DK64? There's the first one in Frantic Factory and then a rematch in Creepy Castle. I do agree the first one is a lot of fun. It's very basic. You can probably beat it in the first try. The rematch one is a lot tougher. It's still fun. They definitely upped the difficulty in that one. So it's one of those things where they're both good, but I think the first one is probably the best. But speaking of races, of these two, which is your favorite, the race car or the seal? I mean, the seal isn't bad, but the race car is kind of more of an obvious winner in my opinion. All right, so which Beetle race is the worst? The first one with Tiny Kong or the rematch with Lanky? And I do think I have to agree the Lanky rematch is a little tougher. It's weird. It's like not challenging to beat the race or even necessarily collect enough coins. I have a lot more difficulty with just getting to the end. There's so many more opportunities to like fall down, fall into lava. Tiny's is still tough, don't get me wrong, but I like feel the dread even more with Lanky's. And so now, which of the two races are you removing from the game? Any of the beetle races or any of the rabbit races? We don't like the rabbit, but man, we really don't like the beetle. I love this poll a whole lot. I mean, there's no wrong answers. It's just a very fun, which of these 4 Kongs do you think gives the best musical performance? I'm a little surprised to see Tiny so low. I mean, I love the little saxophone solo. It's just very fun, very sassy, like bravo. Kind of fun to see Link and Chunky are tied. I mean, It's hysterical to see Chunky with the triangle. It's just very fitting to his character while also being like the opposite of like big tough character, right? And if I could add a fifth, I'm curious as to see where Donkey Kong would rank in all this. And this is kind of a fun poll because it's essentially which is your favorite Kong. There's a little more to it. So if you just enter the tag barrel as DK, which are you switching to next? And I do think it really depends on like the situation. I default to Tiny as much as I can because I love how easy it is to explore around a world with her. But Diddy Kong is also like kind of for the same reason. If there's a jetpack nearby, I'm using it. All right, so now to start voting for which abilities are the best. We're putting Kong against Kong. And this one's kind of interesting because DK's invincibility and Chunky's invisibility are not too far off from being the same, but different, if that makes sense. But I do agree that DK's is probably the better one. All right, so now we got which of these abilities are your favorite, and no surprise, Tiny's ponytail twirl is the winner. I mean, it's just one of the best abilities in the game. Happy to see that Diddy Kong's rocket barrel boost is really high up there too. I mean, they're great travel adventure abilities. And so, fun fact, I found a couple frames of T-pose Dogadon. This poll is kind of an obvious one. Which funky upgrade do you like the most, the homing ammo or the zoom scope? I like the zoom scope on paper. I think it's a fun idea, but yeah, the mechanic of it is not quite correct. Homing ammo is just straight up fun, and it's a great way to take out baddies. I'm a little surprised by these results. I mean, there really aren't that many mini boss fights in the game, and I think the giant kosher is a stretch. The toy monster is super fun. It's a great surprise, very fitting to the world. I thought the giant spider would be a little higher up for actually the same reasons. Very fun boss, good surprise, very fitting to the world. I have a good time fighting it, but I can't doubt the toy monster made for a really good surprise. And so I totally forgot the poll before that was scheduled for the wrong time. So bonus poll, pick a collectible. And people are really gravitating towards the rainbow coin. That makes perfect sense. But the Nintendo coin, I feel like, is the one to get. Just get it done. And so it's less a surprise with this poll which series deserves a new game. DK64 specifically would love to see a sequel. However, the DK series has received more games, whereas the Banjo series could really deserve another new game. I mean, I think both are very deserving of a new game. This poll is really interesting to me, the King K. Rool fight. And it's interesting because I do think each Kong has moments that get really stressful. I personally don't think Diddy Kong's segment is the toughest in the whole fight. I would argue Tiny Kong's is probably a little more challenging. I remember really struggling with that the first time. Chunky's is also really challenging. I mean, it's the very end. You really don't want to screw it up. You got to really time out those punches. It's tough, but really interesting to see that a lot of people struggled with Diddy Kong's segment, and I think it's just perhaps folks who haven't quite mastered the jetpack, you know? So there are a lot of glitches in DK64. This is a fun one because there's so many to choose from. How could you possibly pick a favorite? Swimming through walls is definitely like a classic one and very practical. The testing room is just a fun glitch, kind of a fun bug to experiment with. Moonkick is, I think, an obvious winner here. I mean, it's such a like wacky thing to experience and just very fun and practical. I thought banana duping would be way higher. I mean, you're copying golden bananas. You can collect a whole lot more than just the 5 that's locked to a Kong. So I thought that was going to be second place. It's last. And now for a really fun one. Which boss fight is the scariest? Not the toughest, but the scariest. And I think I do agree. Majak is pretty freaking creepy. I mean, it takes the cake for most challenging, but also the scariest. Freaky design. You have no idea what kind of moveset he's got up his sleeves. But also just like that music, that terrifying laugh. Like, yeah, that's a winner for sure. All right, so now to talk about the easier boss fights, which one do we think is the easiest? And the very first boss fight, Armadillo and Jungle Japes, it makes a lot of sense, but people made a really good point in chat that that's the only boss fight where you have one full melon life. When you get to World 2 and fight Dogadon, you get 2 watermelon lives. And the first match with Dogadon is not very different from first Armadillo. So in a way, I think Armadillo first round is a little tougher than Dogadon, just because you have less room for failure. Otherwise, those two are, yeah, the easiest for sure. I love the idea of adding a new world to DK64 and what that theme might look like. There's really a whole lot to choose from. It's kind of cool to see that a lot of people are really down for a winter themed world. That's pretty cool. But I was really psyched to see that some folks would be down for New Donk City. I mean, we got that little experiment with Mario Odyssey, and I think it would be really cool to look into even more of that. So Crystal Caves, it has a handful of really tough challenges. There's DK's rotating igloo, and there's Diddy's timed cabin. And I actually don't agree with these results because DK's rotating igloo, you just keep trying at it. You keep giving it a shot. I mean, the same could be said for Diddy's cabin, but you're not locked to time. And also you can just abuse a fun glitch. If you play your bongos as soon as you enter the igloo, some buggy thing happens and the igloo doesn't rotate anymore. And that alone is like game changer. But even without that glitch, don't get me wrong, it's brutal that it takes out a whole melon life, but Diddy's time cabin, I just think is that much more brutal. Like, you need crystal coconuts for that jetpack. If you blow through all of them, now you're stuck looking for more resources. That timer is just insanely low. I truly think Diddy's cabin is that much more challenging. This poll is very surprising to me. Have you 101% completed DK64? And I guess 101% completing is different from beating the game. Those are two very different questions, but of 262 people, more than half have not 101%ed this. And I think that goes to speak to how challenging this game can be, especially if either the Nintendo coin or Rare coin are just too difficult to collect. For some people, they just can't quite get it. It's just so challenging, but that also means that they're not able to beat the game. Very interesting results. So which element is the most dangerous? We got quicksand, lava, green goo, or whatever it's called. I do agree that the green goo is probably the most dangerous because you go the majority of the game never seeing it. Then you suddenly see it in Creepy Castle and like, oh, what is that? Do a little trust fall into it and boom, instant death. You're kicked back to like the beginning of the world. Like, that's pretty brutal. I will add though, we talked about this in the comments, the lava I think is a very fair second place contender because there are some moments in the game where the lava is instant kill, but there's also instances where the lava just takes away a little health. And so the lava, I think, is first introduced in Angry Aztec. If you fall in the lava, oops, you take a little bit of health. That's fine. It behaves like quicksand. But if you have that mentality in mind and then discover lava later on and oops, fall into it, whoa, now you're dead. Whoa, now you're starting over. So I think that just kind of plays little mind games on you, like, which is actually more dangerous? What is going on with this lava? Is it actually supposed to be this deadly or not? I think this poll is really interesting. Which world would you delete from the game? And I specifically did not choose Gloomy Galleon because I knew that would be too obvious of a selection. And I wanted to really throw a curveball at people. What world besides Gloomy Galleon are you going to go for? And dang, Crystal Caves got really high up there. I'm looking at the other three. A lot of people love Jungle Japes, and that's great. That's fantastic. But this is what I'm talking about. There are Angry Aztec haters. It's not as high. It's in third place, but Fungi Forest is like, whoa, really? Fungi Forest? Are you kidding? Wow. But hey, this is why I threw it out there. I wanted to see, besides Gloomy Galleon. All right, so let's talk about the DK Arcade. Which phase is the toughest? And without a doubt, 75M is the winner. It's just insanely brutal. You spend so much time getting to that point, and those springs are very hard to predict, very challenging to get a feel for their movement and where you should place yourself. I struggle with it the most. I would love to abuse save states for this. I do agree that 100M is worthy of second place just because it's like, okay, final level, very nerve-wracking. I can't mess up. We're almost done. One small mistake and we're done. This is kind of similar to a previous poll, which enemy is the easiest to defeat. And without a doubt, Naughty's gonna win. Really, Mushroom Men and Critters are probably, I would say, are tied. I think they all go down in one hit. Zinger is definitely like one of the toughest because you can't just run up to it and punch it. You can't just run up and kick it. Like, yeah, those are not the easiest. They do go down easy, but you got to really put in some work for it. All right, and now which boss fight is the toughest to beat? But I changed it up so that it's some of the least popular boss fights, some of the easier boss fights, if you will. I think I can agree King Cutout is probably tougher amongst these four. I can agree Armadillo Rematch is, I mean, it's not too far off from the first fight, but he's got that like locked on missile that's pretty tough to avoid, and I can agree that's a challenging one. This is definitely an interesting poll. Which Kong besides Tiny has a chance of defeating Majak? And with glitches, it seems you absolutely can defeat Majak with any Kong. I do agree that Diddy probably has the highest chance. And that being said, DK's got the moon kick glitch, so he's probably got a fair chance at it as well. Which of these Diddy Kong flying challenges do you prefer? They're, in my opinion, the same. I really don't think they're any different. Interesting to see that people prefer Buzzer, the one in Angry Aztec. Buzzer, you can do the challenge at really any time, versus the Owl, you have to do it at nighttime. So I think that makes the most sense. That explains why it's so low. This is a crazy poll. I just threw out all 4 letters of Kong with 0 expectations. Interesting to see O is first place. Couldn't tell you why. I think it's funny. K is in second place. I don't know. This one, yeah, this poll makes the most sense. Which member of the Kong family is most valuable? Cranky Kong for sure. His abilities, like, you need them. You can't not have them. Funky Kong gets super helpful at times, but I would actually say that Candy Kong might be more valuable than Funky, just because, one, the instruments probably more valuable. Like, they take out more enemies and it's easier, but also the health upgrades are huge. It's like Candy Kong's a little underrated at times, but like, I actually think she might be more valuable than Funky Kong in that sense. So we got the rabbit, and there's a challenge in Crystal Caves. He's strapped to TNT. Are you gonna save him? No. This is kind of a wacky poll. Who would win in a fight against K. Rool? And I do agree that Funky Kong probably has the biggest chance. He's tough like DK or Chunky, and he's got all the ammo. Like, and heck, he finished the fight at the end with K. Rool. But really interesting to see Candy Kong in second place. I don't really know what to make of that. This is a crazy poll. Have you played the DK64 randomizer? A lot of people have not played it yet. Obviously, I've played it. I've got videos on it. I've done a live stream on it. I definitely want to do more randomizer in the future. I highly recommend it. Like, it's an absolute blast. I love asking this question because it's just wacky coming up with a sequel title for DK64. And I love all options. We got Donkey Kong 64 2, Donkey Kong 128, Donkey Kong 64 Part 2, or if it came out today on the Switch, Donkey Kong Switch. I'm actually surprised that is the winner, just because I think, I don't know, all the other ones are so wacky and funny. Thoughts on Squawks the Parrot? A lot of people love him. I don't really have a strong opinion on him, but I'm sure he's probably more helpful in the country games. He's just kind of there. This one's kind of a fun little trivia for you. How old did Donkey Kong 64 turn last year? A lot of people got it right. 25 years old. Crazy that this game's 25 years old now. This year it'll be 26. Good times. So it seems like this poll was not understood. Which Kong is friend-sized? I know in the comments, some people are like, I don't know what that means. Diddy Kong's the winner. I actually think Chunky Kong might be the winner in my opinion. I guess there's also no wrong answers. This is a super interesting poll. Who is the fastest? There was a great discussion in the comments, and while Tiny Race Car was the winner, I don't think that's correct, because Tiny, she's using Mini Monkey to shrink down. How fast is this little, I mean, we're talking like an actual toy race car. Those things aren't that fast. So realistically speaking, Lanky Kong Rank Sprint might be the actual winner here. That boy's moving fast. Which blaster would hurt the most? And I definitely agree. I think Chunky's the winner here. That sounds like a painful weapon, but I do agree that DK's is probably all the more tough. I mean, it's there in the DK wrap. If he shoots it, it's gonna hurt. Doesn't say that about Chunky. That being said, so we did like not a tiebreaker poll, but after seeing Diddy and Lanky so low on the poll and kind of having an afterthought, well, would Tiny's feather bow be painful? It's essentially a crossbow, which would be more painful. And the results really did not sway anymore. It's still gonna be Chunky Kong. This is just a fun, wacky, pick your favorite lyric, if you will, of the DK rap. So we got, come on, Cranky, take it to the fridge. And since we can't fit them all, we've got walnuts, peanuts, pineapple smells. Don't know why Walnuts is the winner here, which is really interesting because Walnuts is not a item in the game. And then we got the remainder fruits. Got grapes, melons, oranges, and coconut shells. No expectations, but coconut shells, that's a good end liner. I like it. Which is your favorite animal, buddy? I'm not surprised that Rammy's the winner. It's a pretty easy, straightforward character to use. You get to destroy things. My thing is that Engard makes Gloomy Galleon more enjoyable to explore and easier to travel in the water. So which Kong has the toughest minecart challenge? I do agree that Chunky's is probably the toughest. There's just a lot of curveballs getting thrown at you. I think DK's is a fair second place. It's a long challenge. It's like 5 minutes continuous, but I do agree that the curveballs are nothing in comparison to Chunky's. What are your thoughts on the Blueprints Splat system? I agree. I'm also a fan of it. I like it. I also just like how the game's telling you, okay, there's a specific gold banana tied to this character per Kong in every world. Go find them. Chunky. We got regular and Disco Chunky, and boy, am I psyched to see Disco Chunky's the winner here. No wrong answers, but also we love a Disco Chunky. So, which version of Fungi Forest do you prefer? Both are great in my opinion, and I really love how different areas of the world are open to you depending on day or night. I think I agree day might be the best. It's way more welcoming. Nighttime is pretty terrifying in some aspects, and the challenge kind of goes up in some ways. So, Jetpack or DK Arcade? I don't really know what to make of this because the Nintendo coin is a lot more challenging to receive. At the same time, like if we're just talking about the games, DK Arcade, yeah, that might be a game I'd be more interested in playing. All right, which banana is more challenging to receive, Mechanical Fish or the Rabbit? I do super agree with these results. The Rabbit is a real SOB. The fact that it seems like you have to like cheat it. You got to cheese the game to actually like get the golden banana, and that's just brutal. Another goofy, no wrong answers, fun poll here. Oh, banana. It is funny to me that it builds up from the first to the second to the final Donkey Kong. Like, right on, guys. We did it. Okay, so this one's kind of fun. We're just going to go through each Kong and essentially getting to feel, hey, how do you feel about Donkey Kong? Is he peak? Is he your favorite Kong? Is he okay? Who are you talking about? And it's really funny because this character's peak tends to be the winner. And it's always fun to see, oh, like how many people consider it their favorite Kong of the group. Kind of crazy that he's okay is in second place, but whatever. And then we've got Diddy Kong, and you'll kind of see the results will vary, but are essentially the same. More than half agreeing he's peak. We got a couple more people saying, yeah, he's my favorite. There's some folks that are just like, yeah, he's okay. I don't agree with that. I think he's a great Kong. Lanky Kong, I'm less surprised if he's okay is a little higher. Just because, you know, he has no style, has no grace, you know, funny face. But that being said, still pretty favorable results. Now this right here is a crime. Tiny Kong, she's okay one. I think that's just cruel. You guys are haters. I want to talk to 47% of you because what is that? Whatever, man. I love Tiny Kong. I think she's great. I think you're all wrong for that one. You did her dirty. But then you all kind of save the day by voting for Chunky Kong. He's peak. It's the highest he's peak character. A little bit lower with the he's okay, but we do appreciate seeing a high vote for Chunky. All right, so now we have a couple of fun ideas. We've got duo DK and Diddy versus a different duo. Who would win in a fight? And so the Kongs versus Banjo and Kazooie, I think that'd be a really interesting fight. I'm not really sure who might win. Personally, I could see it being a potential 50-50 fight, but I think personally I might be leaning towards the Kongs in this one. It's a tough call. All right, next we've got the Kongs versus the Mario Brothers, and this one got a little closer to 50-50. It's another, I'm not really sure who might win this one, but I think I agree. I can see the Kongs maybe winning this fight more. I agree it's going to be a close call. I think the Mario Brothers might have too much similarities, whereas the Kongs have more diversity in moveset and size and strength. I could see them having more high ground. Okay, and so now the Kongs versus Sonic and Tails, and this one's getting even closer to 50-50. Once again, I'm not quite sure who would win. I can also see this being a very close one. Sonic's very fast. That's it's gonna come down to if he can outspeed DK in his strength, right? Okay, now we kind of have a no-brainer, the Kongs versus ukulele. I mean, I would feel like they wouldn't be too far off from Banjo and Kazooie, but also I don't think they're as strong. Yeah, this one's kind of a no-brainer. I would like to see that fight though. All right, and then admittedly, I was struggling to come up with more duos for the Kongs to fight. Now we've got Duck Hunt, even more so. I don't think they have a chance. The Kongs are winning this fight. All right, so now we got more of a DK versus Banjo-Kazooie. Which game is more this or that? And so starting off with which game is more challenging, and I do think I agree that DK64 might be more challenging than Banjo. Now that I've finished playing the full Banjo-Kazooie, the game, very fun game, but I just think there's so much more to do in DK64. This is a very interesting poll. Which game sold more units at the time? It's definitely DK64. I mean, that's just a fact. Yeah, so I mean, it's not too far off. DK64 sold over 5 million copies. Banjo-Kazooie over 3 million copies. Not super far off, but yeah, DK64 definitely got a lot more. Alrighty, and now which game has more collectibles? Without a doubt, it's DK64. There's been discussion that this game has like the Guinness World Record of most collectibles in the game. Who wants to try to top that one? Not me. And this one's really interesting. Which game did you play first? Yeah, Banjo-Kazooie technically came out first before DK64, but people were probably more familiar with the Kongs at the time anyways, so less surprising about this. Which game have you 100% completed? We've got DK64, Banjo-Kazooie, or both. And I was happy to see that the majority have completed both games. I thought that was really cool. Very surprised to see DK64 is above Banjo, though. That's a lot to collect in comparison. This is kind of a fun poll. Which of these characters would you want as a playable character? And have now been playing Banjo-Tooie. I super think it's fun knowing that, all right, I can play as Mumbo now. So just has me thinking even more, all right, Funky, Candy, Cringer, or Snide, which character would be someone I want to play as? And I think I can agree Funky Kong, again, would be a very fun character to play as. Lots of opportunity, probably has a great moveset. What's going on with Candy Kong? What a second place, huh? Swimming mechanics are a very fun thing to talk about in these games. I do agree that DK64 had the best swimming mechanics just because of no oxygen restrictions. You can just stay underwater as long as you want. I can't really decide which game has worse breathing mechanics, Banjo versus Mario 64. I guess there's not a ton of swimming in Banjo, so its mechanics aren't too bad. Mario has a lot more swimming, but I think recovering your health is a little easier. To exclude the breathing mechanics alone, like, I think DK64, like, it really did a great job with the swimming mechanics itself. Like, it feels pretty good to move those Kongs in water. It's not nearly a drag in comparison to others. This is kind of a tough poll. Which world is larger? I almost think Fungi Forest might be larger, but I do think it could be a close call. Both are big worlds, without a doubt. And then we got the opposite. Which world is smaller, Jungle Japes or Hideout Helm? Both are pretty small worlds, but I do agree Hideout Helm must be the winner. It's very linear, straightforward. It's not designed for the players to be there a long time, so I agree with that. Then we got which world has more water in typo, Donkey Kong 64. Jungle Japes or Crystal Caves? Yeah, definitely Crystal Caves. I mean, it has that river cutting through like the majority of the world. It just makes sense. That's the winner. Excluding Donkey Kong, who has the best segment in the DK rap? Kind of no wrong answers here, but it's really funny to see Lanky Kong as the winner here. Lanky's is kind of like that part in the DK rap, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, yes, we finally made it. This poll is kind of a tough one, and it's hard to visually show it in a poll. What's your high score in the Rambi Arena minigame? It's a fun minigame. It's a great way to just kind of take out a bunch of naughties. I'm psyched to see a lot of people got plus 200. That's a good quality number. End guards is a lot more challenging. This minigame, it's very challenging just because you're swimming around, you gotta jump in the rings. It's hard to really like stack up your score. I'm surprised that 48% of you said plus 400 points. I feel like you're not being truthful to that, but good for you if that is true. We're kind of reaching the end of the polls and getting closer and closer to DK December. So kind of like exploring different content. Which of these DK stages is your favorite in Smash Bros? Makes perfect sense. Congo Jungle is the winner here. I don't think any of them are bad, but it does make sense to me that Jungle Hijinks is so low. And I think it's just because it was introduced so much later in the Smash Bros series. It's going to be hard to win over some of the players. And continuing Smash, we've got, what is your favorite version of Donkey Kong's Final Smash? Brawl's version and the Wii U 3DS version are a little similar. They got their differences, but essentially it's the same. Ultimates is way different. I think it was the transition that was needed. Just a full-blown heavy punches, like, yeah, that was a good call for DK. Okay, Disco Chunky, Smash or Pass. The majority wins. The majority voted Smash, so Disco Chunky's got the moves for sure. I just want to know, the 26% of you, why is he not good enough for you? This is kind of a crazy thought process. I'm like, what if Funky Kong had an instrument? What would he play? I definitely agree. It's got to be some sort of like rock instrument, bass guitar or drums. I threw in a curveball, I don't know, bagpipes, harmonica. Like, what could this guy play? I could totally see him play bass guitar. I think that would be a fun one. And then we've got the same question for Cranky Kong. Would he play a piano, acoustic guitar? I don't know, a tuba, a xylophone? Truthfully, I don't even know. What could the guy play? He's kind of a tricky one to pin down an instrument. But someone did point out that he plays the gramophone in DK Country, and I think that's fair. I think that makes sense for him. And as we were getting that much closer to DK December, we've got the Thanksgiving poll, which is 4 different golden bananas to choose from. People went straight for the first one, but then some people went for the third option. It feels like a multiple choice question, and you just pick C if you're not sure, because I don't know, that seems like maybe that's the best choice. And that is it. The last poll before DK December. Do you love Donkey Kong 64? And of almost 500 votes, there was a couple people that said no. Who hurt you? I just want to talk. I just want to see what's wrong, man.